doing Old Testament survey, the idea with this series is to elevate the importance of the Old Testament in your thinking, because this is really the foundation of the New Testament. It's 3 times as long as the New Testament, so there's a lot of material to cover. We're still in Genesis. This is lesson 17, and we've had 5 on the Patriarchs, and we're going to have one more at least, I think, on Joseph. But Jacob, we will finish today. That's the plan. So the Patriarchs, that as we see them, this is Genesis 12 through 50, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Joseph. Although technically Joseph is not one of the patriarchs. That's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But he is certainly a significant figure in the book of Genesis and a formative figure for the nation. So, and a lot of material is devoted to his exploits in the book of Genesis. So we'll be looking at him next. But today it's Jacob. All right. So, and I have, if you see the notes, you just have, it only covers 1 page, but you'll notice I have quite a bit of reading under each point. And we'll see. I'm just sort of debating how much of this can we cover. I want to get through all the way through it, but we're just going to do what we can. So here's where we were with Jacob the last time. We talked about Jacob's sojourn with Laban, the purple box there in the middle of the slide. 20 years with Laban, 14 years of work for his wives, 6 years for the flocks. And I also note Joseph is 6 years old when Jacob leaves the company of Laban, and we've calculated that out. And it's interesting, is like in a way, does it really matter how old these guys were when various events happened? Not exactly, but the Bible tells us how old they were at various points. So being obsessive about these numbers, I like to keep track of that. I like to get my Bible facts in order in my head as much as I can, just to help me understand the Bible. So at this point, the other thing we noted is that when Jacob goes to Laban's house, he's 76 years old. And in the Sunday school pictures, when you have Jacob, he's praying at Bethel, he has a dream of his ladder, and we have a young man there at Bethel. He's 76 years old. That's young. My wife says she's not quite there yet. It's closing in on it. All right, yeah, it is. Unfortunately, it does happen. All right, so here we go. So we're going to talk about the years in the land. All right, so this is the part that we're going to talk. It's basically Genesis 31 to Genesis 46. That basically covers it, but we're just going to work our way through some various things. And I'm going to now clear the screen of all of that, and we're going to change our scale and put him in at the age of 96. And so his father Jacob at this point is 156. His father Jacob. Isaac is 156. We're just keeping track here. There's 60 years between them. So escape from Laban. Now Laban is his father-in-law. Remember, he changed his wages many times. He out Jacob. He was a real trickster. And but Jacob managed to come away with 4 wives, 11 sons, 1 daughter, and a lot of flocks. He was a very wealthy man when he leaves, but we're going to be reading about that. Now, I don't want to read the whole passage, the whole story, because it'll just take too long. So I want to get down to where Laban hears that Jacob is leaving. So verse 22 of Genesis 31. And we're going to read a few verses there, and then we're going to read something at the end. We're not going to cover the whole thing, but I do want to explain a little bit about what God is doing and what is being said between these 2 men. All right, so verse 22, when it was told Laban on the 3rd day that Jacob had fled, then he took his kinsman with him and pursued him a distance of 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream of the night and said to him, "Be careful that you do not speak to Jacob, either good or bad." Laban caught up with Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen camped in the hill country of Gilead. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done by deceiving me and carrying away my daughters like captives of the sword?" Why did you flee secretly and deceive me, and did not tell me so that I might send you away with joy and with songs, with timbrel and with lyre? And did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob. Now you have indeed gone away because you long greatly for your father's house, but why did you steal my gods? Now we'll come to that in just a second. Then Jacob replied to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. Now, we're just going to stop there at this point and say a couple of things. They are living in a world where most of the people are pagans. Laban, these are household idols that he's talking about, that have been taken from his house. The person who took them was Rachel, Jacob's wife, okay, his favorite wife. Now, things are a little complicated in terms of pure religion in these days. Remember, there's no Bible. Nobody has a Bible. They don't have anything to refer to understand, to grow in their spiritual lives. So what they have are stories that are passed down orally. Probably Abraham and Isaac and Jacob know about creation to some extent. They know about the flood. And then they have these encounters with God, where God actually appears to them, either through visions or in an appearance like the three men that came to visit Abraham or whatever. And those stories would be passed down. And so they are worshipers of the true God, but their worship is confused. Now that's not to apologize for where they're at spiritually. Okay, there's some things that maybe they should have been able to figure out. This isn't a good idea to have these idols. But in any case, that is the case. That's what would happen. As the story goes, Rachel hides the idols from her father. He doesn't find them, and then Jacob is very angry with his father-in-law. So we're going to go all the way down to verse 43. Then Laban replied to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine, he says. They weren't, because of the deal they had made. You see, this is why Jacob went in the first place by secret, because he knew what Laban is like. Okay? But what can I do this day to these daughters or to their children whom they have borne? So now come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Then Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. So they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Now Laban called it Jagar Sahadutha, something like that, Sahadutha. But Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore it was named Galeed. Galeed means witness. Okay? And Mizpah, for Mizpah means judgment. For he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. So they're making a final deal. This is their final transaction. Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, behold the pillar which I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to me for harm. Now, notice this line. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So we're going to come back to that verse. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his kinsmen to the meal, and they ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban rose, kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. Now, it's very interesting what's stated there. Commentaries often will say that Terah, the father of Abraham, was a worshiper of the moon, because the land they came from, Ur of the Chaldees, the moon goddess was the chief goddess. Okay, and but here he says the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father. Okay, so Laban himself has a consciousness of this God, Elohim. their father had a consciousness of this God. So I think the scriptures are telling us here. Now, they may, like I said, these people are not, they're not in a context where they have a lot of revelation from God. They have the stories that are passed down from their fathers, but they do not know God as we can know him through the Bible. Like we've got the Old and the New Testament, we got the whole thing. All they have are the stories and then their own personal experiences. So it seems to me that Terah and Abraham and his brother Nahor were all followers of the true God. They may have also had, as Laban did, household idols. Okay? Rachel took them with her. It's a very strange thing to us. But you do have to remember where they are in their context. They do not have a Bible like we have. So I keep saying that. Notice he also says, the fear of his brother Isaac. So that's another term of his father Isaac. That's another term for God. Okay? The fear of sometimes stands in for God. All right, Tola.
So I thought God called Abraham out of his idolatrous nation.
Yes.
The father and the other brother, they
Yes.
were not part of Abraham's call.
That's correct.
Then Rachel, Laban,
Yes.
they were still idolatrous.
Yes.
That's my own
Right.
opinion.
Right.
So, Isaac came, Jacob came from Abraham and Isaac.
Yes.
And maybe through that true religion.
Yes.
Jacob had been following that true religion.
Yes.
But Laban, they are idolatrous. So
Right.
Rachel has not really learned anything about God.
Right.
That
Okay,
was
so
why she still held on to the idol
right,
of the
right.
father.
Rachel is heavily influenced, of course, by her family upbringing. Okay, and I think Laban. Okay, so Laban is the kind of guy. It's sort of there's Christians like this. They'll talk like they're Christians, but they don't act like they're Christians, right? And they have the whole Bible. Okay, and so Laban, because this verse says, Abram, Nahor, and their father, so Terah, all knew this God. Okay, so it does say they knew this God. Now, how good did they follow God? We don't know. Abram was the one that was called out, but that doesn't mean that these other guys were not followers of the true God. But Laban, he's the kind of guy, you'd ask him, are you, if in our era, you'd say, are you a Christian? Oh yeah, I'm a Christian. But then you look the way he lives, and he's a liar and a cheat and a scoundrel, and it's like, really? Okay, so that, I think you're right, Rachel is definitely affected by her father's upbringing. But then on the other hand, we also see what kind of man her son was, Joseph was. So there's some changes happening, and we don't have enough information. That's the other thing. Rob.
You're probably getting this, I don't know, but I've always thought Jacob's conversion happened at the wrestling with God. Because he was a changed man at that point. So it does require all, Judaism as well, as you're saying, a commitment, a personal turning to that God. It might explain why Rachel didn't really quite understand it. Shouldn't have.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, here's the thing, though. We don't want to impose a New Testament concept on the Old Testament. Okay, so Rob is saying, well, okay, I always thought the real time when Jacob really decided to follow God, is what we're coming up to, is the wrestling with the angel. Even there, he's bargaining away. So he's a work in progress. So it's really hard to pin it down in that, because we are tempted to try to impose New Testament ideas on the Old Testament, and that I think throws us off a bit. So in any case, we do know that he becomes a follower of God. All right, so the next point, the fear of Esau and wrestles with God. So that's the next bit. Now, how much am I going to read here? Okay, so he's coming now he's left Laban behind. He's now coming into the land, and guess who's waiting for him in the land? His brother, who he stole the birthright and he stole the blessing. And when he left the land 20 years before, his brother said, as soon as my dad dies, I'm killing that guy. Okay? That's what he said. No brotherly love. Okay? Okay. So, chapter 32. Okay, so let's see. Have we... Okay, the meeting with Esau is the next chapter, so we're not going to talk about that right now. But verse 24 to 32 is this bit. I want to focus on that. That's where Jacob wrestles with the angel. Okay, then Jacob, this is chapter 32, 24. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh, so that the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. Okay, so Jacob, remember, means supplanter. Israel means prince with God. Okay? For you have striven with God and man and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him and said, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been preserved. Now the sun rose upon him as he crossed over Penuel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore, to this day, the sons of Israel do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh in the sinew of the hip. So that's just a little tradition that's in there. We're not going to make much out of that. But anyway, here's the thing. He wrestles with God. So he's afraid to meet Jacob or Esau. But there's this wrestling with God. And the point of the wrestling is that Jacob is, though he hangs on to God, this is an apparition or a God appearing to him in human form. So he hangs on to this figure, but God has way more power than he has, right? And he has to come to the point where he realizes that God is bigger than him. And you know, he's always making the deals with God. When he was at Bethel before, he said, you know, if you bring me back here in one piece, basically, I'll serve you. Well, God says, no, you're going to serve me. Now he changes his name, and that is significant as well. The person who names somebody is the one who has authority over him. So God is saying, I have authority over you. All right. I'm going to move on quickly because, and I'll stop once I get through these four things. So meeting with Esau and then Shechem. We're not going to go into I don't think I'm going to read, well, I guess I had something here. The meeting with Esau. Let's read that part. And then we'll just sort of touch on Shechem. Then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So here he is. He's afraid of his brother, and his brother's coming with an army. Okay, like, this is not good. Okay. Esau, it looked like, well, they probably had swords. They probably were armed. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. And notice what a gentleman he is. He put the maids and their children in front. He did this. And Leah and her children next. So next, the second favorite wife. And then Rachel and Joseph last. That's the favorite. So, if Esau kills anybody, it's the first bench. Okay, so that's how it goes. It is funny. But he himself passed on ahead of them. Well, I guess he went, maybe he did lead them. Okay. And bowed down to the ground 7 times till he came near to his brother. Then Esau, this is beautiful actually. Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and the children. He said, who are these with you? He said, the children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maids came near with their children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise came near with her children. They bowed down. Afterward Joseph came near with Rachel, and they bowed down. And he said, what do you mean by all this company which I have met? So he had sent a flock ahead of them. And he said, to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own. Jacob said, no, please, if now I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand, for I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please take my gift which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty. So he urged him, and he took it. So this is a little bit of Middle Eastern bargaining. And the guy says, oh no, I don't need it. Oh, please take it, please take it. Finally he says, okay, I'll take it. That's how it works. Okay. So anyhow, so Jacob is afraid of Esau, but Esau greets him with open arms. I think we need to say that. And Esau has his whole, it's interesting here, Esau's whole demeanor towards his brother has changed in 20 years. And he welcomes him. Now, there's something else that's going to come up. Just want you to hold that thought. He then says, let me come to you. Jacob says, the children are small, the flocks are young, blah, blah. So you just go ahead and we'll meet up with you. Now, oftentimes preachers come to that and they say, Jacob was trying to, still play, trying to avoid Esau. I don't think that's true. We'll see some things coming up later that I think will prove my little point here. But let's just move on. So in Shechem, so he goes to Shechem. He settles down in Shechem. Shechem is a pagan city, and they sort of set up a house there. There's fields and flocks. And I don't believe, for some reason, I see. I got the treachery of Simeon and Levi next. Okay. So I'm not going to go read all this story, but basically what happens is the prince, the son of the king of Shechem, takes the daughter of Jacob and has relations with her. Okay. And but it says he was of a noble character, and he wanted to marry the girl. Now, timeline. So when you read up on when Dinah, this daughter, was born, she's born somewhere very close to the time Joseph was born. So when Jacob and the whole family are coming to meet Esau, Jacob is 96 and these children are about 6 years old. So this incident in Shechem has to happen later. And I know that in the ancient world, often girls were married off very young, 12, 13, 14, which seems bizarre to us. But I would say, so you put in the notes there, she would be at least 12 years old, I would think. So this probably is 6 years on. They've been into the land for 6 years. Okay, we don't have details. We read this, one chapter leads to another, and it's almost like, that's the next day. That's not the way it works. There's often years between the chapters. All right, so there is, now I'm going to give you another, notice I have question marks. It's an undetermined age. Treachery of Simeon. Okay, so what happens? All right, okay, the treachery of Simeon and Levi. Yes, thank you. Okay, so Simeon and Levi, they say, okay, and the tribe says, the people of Shechem say, we want to be allies with you, and they're not being honest in what they're saying. They're wanting to get Jacob's wealth, but Simeon and Levi, they say, okay, if you guys will be circumcised, we will make an alliance with you. And so, okay, they say that's easy. I guess. And so they do it, and they are in pain. They have not recovered. And so Simeon and Levi come in and kill every last living man in that village. Because of Dinah. Okay. And Jacob is shocked they did this, but they did it. And they said, should he treat our sister that way? And so their rashness will result, when it comes to the blessing at the end from Jacob, it will result in they will have a lesser outcome in a sense from the other brothers because of what they've done. Okay? So this is just part of the story, and there's so many details in here. I just don't want to get, like I say, I don't want to get bogged down in these details. So we want to move on. He's moving to Bethel. Okay, chapter 35. So we're skipping over basically chapter 34. Let's see. So verses 5 through 8 is what I wanted to read here in Bethel. So it says, as they journeyed, there was a great terror upon the cities which were around them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, and he and all the people who were with him. He built an altar there and called the place El Bethel, which means God, the God of Bethel, or God, God of the house of, how is this? Bethel means house of God. So it's repeating God twice anyway, somehow in that name. I'd have to look it up exactly. Because there God had revealed himself to him when he fled from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried below Bethel under the oak. It was named Allon-Bacuth. All right, so he moves to Bethel, and then the next thing in the chapter, God renews the covenant with Israel. So this is important. This is significant. Remember, he had said, if you bring me back to this place, I will serve you. Comes back to Bethel. So then, verse 9, then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram, the land of Laban, and he blessed him. God said to him, your name is Jacob. You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. And he called him Israel. God also said to him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come forth from you. The land which I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I will give it to you, and I will give the land to your descendants after you. Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone. He poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. So Jacob named the place where God had spoken with him Bethel, house of God. All right. So this is the reason this is significant is, again, the renewal of the Abrahamic covenant. It has passed from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. So these are foundational statements for the nation of Israel. They're not just foundational statements for the nation of Israel. They're also foundational statements for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Because it is through this nation, through the seed of Abraham, God plans to bless the whole world through Jesus Christ, who is descended from each of these men. And as it turns out, in the land of the tribes of Israel, he's from the tribe of Judah. Okay, but again, the repetition of the covenant is very important here. Okay, let's see. I guess I should pause for a second. I've sort of been rattling on. I usually like to involve you. Any questions or comments at this point, Tola?
About Esau welcoming
Yes.
Jacob with open arms.
Yes.
It didn't just happen because Jacob has prevailed in prayer with God. That was why Esau welcomed him with open arms, because that thing was still in the heart of Esau. But the God of all flesh touched him so that he can welcome his brother with love.
Right.
That's the whole news.
Okay, well, certainly, no doubt that Jacob's prayers had much to do with that, I'm sure. And that's a good comment. Anybody else have any comment or question? Debbie?
So the repetition of that covenant just underscores that God always keeps his word.
Yes.
When he says it,
Yes.
it's going to happen. He's
Yeah,
reminding
that's
everyone.
and when God keeps repeating that underscores that God keeps his word. It also underscores that God has a plan, because this is the response. We go back to the first 11 chapters of Genesis. So we have creation and then fall, and then the flood, which is a judgment on the sin of mankind. And then the nations where men just continue to rebel against God. So what's the answer? So the answer is found in this family. Okay? And that's where our answer is found as well. Like we depend on God's answer here to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the foundation of our faith. All right, Rob.
I'm just going to say that we were speaking about, when people came to faith and that sort of thing. But this is an unconditional covenant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it matters if they believe or not, but not to the covenant itself.
Right.
Right?
The covenant is not harmed by even their actions. I'm going to skip over some of the things that Judah does. Okay, he's not a nice guy.
Yeah.
Let's put it that. He's not a nice man. But even so, the covenant is not harmed. That's a good way of putting that. And the king comes from Judah. Even so. Even through that wicked act, right? Because one of those children was from that wicked act. Yes, Antoine.
So Abraham was the first patriarch, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So he's Jacob's or Israel's grandfather. Okay. All right. So let's see. A couple more here on this section. So Rachel dies. Now I have here, I'm not going to read this passage. when she dies in childbirth, she has Joseph earlier, and we don't know what year this is. Notice as I put question marks here, we don't know when it happened. And she dies, she's giving birth to her second son, and she names him Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow. And Jacob names him Benjamin, son of the right hand. Okay? So that's where Benjamin comes in. And then in this chapter, right there is another problem with one of his sons. And Reuben gets involved with his concubine wife, Bilhah. Okay? Now, this is the Bible. See, in the other ancient literature, they always paint their heroes as good guys. They don't tell any bad stuff. But the Bible just tells what happened. And so we have Reuben, and again, Reuben will be, in his blessing from his father, will be diminished because he loses the place of the firstborn. And that actually goes to Joseph, okay, the place of the firstborn. But it's interesting. And the right to rule then slides all the way down to Judah. He's the fourth son. So it's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. So those first three lose out because of what they did. All right, well, let's move on. Now, Jacob is abducted. I put an age. Joseph is abducted. We're just rushing through it. We're just talking about what we know about Jacob at this point. But Joseph, his favorite son, is abducted and sold as a slave to the Midianites, who sell him into slavery in Egypt. Now, I put the date as Jacob must have been about 118 at this point. About. How do I figure that out? All right, so you go over here on the end. We are told that when Jacob goes to Egypt, it is 2 years into the lean years of the prophecy. So that's 2 years of the lean years, the 7 fat years of the prophecy, and then before that there were 2 years that Joseph was in prison. So that's 11 years all told. So there's 130 minus 11 is 119. And so then the question is, how long was Joseph in Potiphar's house before he was thrown into prison? We don't know. So that's why I put 118 question mark. That's where I get my reasoning there. So we do know 2 years later is the death of Isaac, right there. Okay? And there's one other significant thing that happens. I just go to 36. We're going to read this bit. Esau moves away. Verses 6 through 8. Okay, so this is after. The death of Isaac is at the last verse of chapter 35. All right. Verse 6 through 8 of chapter 36. Then Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all his household and his livestock and all his cattle and all his goods which he had acquired in the land of Canaan and went to another land away from his brother Jacob. For their poverty had become too great for them to live together. And the land where they sojourned could not sustain them because of their livestock. So Esau lived in the hill country of Seir. Esau is Edom. Okay? So that's another name for Esau. But notice the years. Both Esau and Jacob have the same age. They're twins. This happens after Isaac dies. They're 120 when Isaac dies. How old was Jacob when he returned to the land? 96. That means they lived in the same region, in contact with each other for 24 years. So this, to me, strengthens the idea that Esau has gotten over the grudge. Now, Esau, I'm not saying he's a godly person. Maybe he has a relationship with God. I don't know. It doesn't say. Certainly his descendants did not. Okay? The Edomites were pagans. But what about Esau? I don't know. In any case, it is here that he moves away. And it's very... Why is that detail in here? Well, it's in there. It's something about this relationship. So it doesn't mean, I think sometimes they're characterized that Jacob is always suspicious of Esau and there's trying to keep a distance. they only had a distance, and the reason that he's given them is because their flocks were too big. They couldn't support each other on the land they were living in, Rob.
Which sort of speaks to the point about their age. They had all these years to accumulate more
Yeah.
flocks and more.
Yeah.
Like, it's something I never thought about when Joseph, the coat of many colors.
Yeah.
He was probably an old man walking around in this coat.
Well, he was 17 at that point.
Oh, so that many years had passed before he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's an interesting, but basically, it's like my cousins. Okay, so my aunt and uncle had 6 boys and 2 girls. And those boys worked that farm. I remember that. We'd go there, and they're always doing something. Working planting the garden, working the cattle, doing something. And, in the old days, that's, so you have a family, they're there to be your hired help for no cost. So that also helps you accumulate wealth. Anyway, so the point is, however, that these 2 families, so there's going to be a group of people. There's wives, they're polygamists. I mean, this is just, the Bible mentions it, doesn't say yes or no about it. And they're working the land, they're growing flocks, and if you are a hard worker and you got a lot of help, you're gonna accumulate wealth. That's just the way it's gonna work. Yeah.
Sorry, my confusion was I was thinking of Jacob instead of Joseph. So,
Right.
So Joseph was fairly young when he was in Potiphar's house.
Yes.
Basically, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he was about, well, he was in let's see here. He would be about 28 or so.
So just a kid.
Just a kid, yeah. Just a little kid. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on, yeah. Okay, so we're just going to move on and finish up Jacob here, and I'm watching my clock. I'm probably not going to read some, I got to read some of this. Okay, so let's hurry up. Okay, so Genesis 47:9, he's in Egypt. This is at year 2 of the lean years, all right? He's 130. And then the next thing is he dies at 147. And Genesis 47 tells us his age at his death. All right, so but we're not going to look at that. We're going to look instead at Israel blesses Joseph's sons. Okay, so Genesis 48. So we're skipping over, the chapters we're skipping over are the chapters that talk about Joseph mostly, and we'll come back and talk about them next time. So Joseph, I want to read starting in verse 15. So he calls Israel now. See, we always want to call him Jacob, but his name is now Israel. Israel wants Joseph to bring his 2 sons, his 2 oldest sons, and he wants to bless them. And this is symbolic because he's giving to Joseph the right of the firstborn. So he gets 2 portions out of the inheritance instead of 1. And he says, these 2 sons are mine. He's going to say, these 2 sons are mine. And all the rest of your sons, so Joseph had other sons, will be named underneath these 2 sons. So Ephraim and Manasseh. Manasseh's the oldest, Ephraim's the second. And they are going to become major tribes in Israel. Ephraim and Manasseh, they're the sons of Joseph. All right, beginning in verse 15, I just want to read this blessing. He blessed Joseph and said, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and may my name live on in them, and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Then Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on Ephraim's head. It displeased him, and he grasped his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also will become a people, and he also will be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. And so that's very interesting. He says, and he blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will pronounce a blessing, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Thus he put Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. I give you 1 portion more than your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. So, the blessing. So it's interesting here. The same thing that happened to Jacob by his own crook. Okay? By his, by hook or by crook. Well, he did it by his own deception. He got the blessing over his older brother Esau. Well, here now, by faith, he puts the blessing on Ephraim over Manasseh. And when we look at the history of Israel subsequently, when they're in the land, Ephraim becomes a larger and more important tribe than Manasseh. And in fact, the northern kingdom is sometimes in the Bible called Ephraim instead of Israel. Okay, so the blessings, these things follow on their way throughout the history of the Old Testament. All right. Now, what else do we want to say? So, Israel prophesies over all of his sons in chapter 49. Don't have time to go through all that. And then Israel dies. Genesis 49, verses 28 to 33. Just the last bit of that chapter. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them when he blessed them. He blessed them, every one, with the blessing appropriate to him. Then he charged them and said to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought, along with the field from Ephron the Hittite for a burial site. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it purchased from the sons of Heth. When Jacob finished charging his sons, he drew his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. And then in Genesis 50 we find Israel is buried. And they do take him to that cave in the land of Canaan, the one part of Canaan that Abraham owned. And there they buried Isaac alongside his wife Leah. All right. Any questions? We've rushed through his life. Boom. Right through all this time. Okay? Yes, Tola.
But later, God forgave Reuben.
Reuben, yes. Yeah.
What that will decode is whatever anybody might have done,
Yes.
whatever anybody might have said about you or place it, because once God said, I'm removing it, God is removing it.
Yes.
Because when I was reading the Bible, I realized that Reuben also have inheritance.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Reuben still had an inheritance. I mean, he did sin, and there was a penalty. So he lost the place of the firstborn, but he still had an inheritance. So God is also gracious. That's a good lesson for us as well. I mean, it's not that we say, okay, well, it's okay. If I sin, that's okay. God's still going to bless me. Well, if you have that attitude, I think God's going to nail you big time. Okay? But the fact is that God is gracious with Reuben as well. All right, Rosemary.
Just backing it up. Did Rachel die in childbirth?
Yes. Yeah, so she died in childbirth, and she is buried somewhere near Bethlehem. Not in the same cave, not in the same place where Leah was buried. So that's a kind of a curiosity. I haven't really read much on that, but that is true. She was buried in Bethlehem, or near Bethlehem. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Wow. We rushed through all of that. I feel like I need to go sit down. Okay. So next time we'll be talking about Joseph. Joseph to me is one of the most dramatic stories. We don't have, other than his sort of seemingly boasting to his brothers, we don't have much negative about Joseph in his life story. And it's one of those, I just love this story. I remember when I was a kid hearing this story in Sunday school, or my parents reading it to me from the Bible story book. One of my favorite stories. It's so cool. So dramatic. Really enjoy Joseph. So we'll talk about him next time. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this survey of the life of Jacob. Lord, he is such a significant and pivotal figure in our faith. Help us to be faithful to you ourselves. Help us not to bargain with you, but to give you our whole hearts right from the beginning. Help us to be people who want to be identified with you all the way along the way and turn away from our wicked ways. In Jesus' name, amen.